Hello, everyone. Juxtaposition here with my Juxtaposition 1 coffee mug. Cup of Joe in the Mo. All right. Today's video will be entitled Ortega Highway, number 74, in paren, a most dangerous highway. All right. Let's get into it, shall we? All right. Behind me here is San Juan Capistrano, which was the 7th of 21 mission forts outposts for the Spanish viceroyalty, who claimed ownership over the indigenous people and renamed this area Alta California. And that was all done in 1768, mostly, where Spain claimed California for its colonial empire. And the governors of the districts were known as viceroys, in other words, the authority over the land. They brought out surveyors to map the coordinates of all the strategic areas and tallest mountaintops, to write down on paper the geography of the land that was being conquered and controlled using a 21 mission system, which took over 60 years to create the system. My point is that there were 21 missions, which were always an army barracks included, with a Catholic basilica and a farm, and later ranchos. There's no reason to build a farm or cattle ranching unless you have a market to deliver the food to. So initially it's just to feed the Franciscan monks who are working in partnership with the Spanish soldiers. So you have to be able to feed the soldiers and the Franciscan monks, who are led by Father Junipero Serra, who was a priest. He had status of being a priest for the indoctrination of the native people, who were either murdered or run off the property, which was then in turn converted into a bell system farming community. They were secured perimeters, secured corridors, and they were 100% military outposts for the Spanish. Now, history has done a tremendous job of concealing this, that Spain financed these trips to bring Jesus to the New World. That's complete balderdash, untrue. It has never been true. And all of the Catholic nuns and priests, and eventually Jesuits and Franciscan priests, are delusional people themselves. They take an oath of chastity, an oath of poverty, and should just be dismissed as clueless individuals. It's a military operation. Everything is military, and the land is parceled out first for Spain, then to the viceroy, who will take the choicest property of the land grant, and then he doles it out to his officers, and all the way down to the level of sergeant will end up with some kind of ranchero of some type. So, in other words, there's a financial incentive to dominate and subjugate the local people. And it has nothing whatsoever to do with Jesus. All right. Jesus is not involved in stealing the land and then parceling it off to create these later ranches, when population and migration from Europe came to California. Then and only then do you create the cattle ranches and sheep and goats and peach tree orchards, right? Apricots, peaches, almonds, rice fields, alfalfa fields to help the cattle along. This is all part of reset. Agenda 2030, which we're under now. We're under a reset now. These are the bells behind my head here. This is how you run a militarized farm called a mission system, is that they have a bell for when you get up in the morning, when you say your prayers, when you go to breakfast, when you begin working in the fields, when you take your lunch, when you take a siesta in the afternoon, when you come to dinner, when you give your evening prayers, and when it's lights out, go to bed. They have a bell for every segment of time in the mission world. It's truly a prison system. If you've never been to a prison or a jail, you don't understand the bell system. They have that installed at prisons. They have a bell that goes off, or a siren, to indicate the next transition of your work day or your sleep day. All right. So anyway, I thought you should see the bell system. This again is at the Mission San Juan Capistrano. Now, just to review, we've done this before. The mission system, they began in San Diego, which is a port facility. The missions were mostly along the coastline. There are some missions that are inland, but eventually we patched them together with a highway known as El Camino Real, which is the King's Highway. But that is not how the missions were constructed. They leapfrogged and went north-south using their ships, their navy, to find ports, militarized naval ports along the coast of what they called Alta California. All right, so the first one was in San Diego de Acala, San Diego de Acala. And the second mission was built in Monterey, in the Presidio Army Base or Navy Base of Monterey, which became an Army base. First, it was the Navy ships. Then they created an infantry force to go inland to claim the land for the Viceroyalty of Spain. Monterey. See, that's who's financing and paying for these ships and the food for the men and the weapon systems, the cannons, the bayonets, the rifles, is sponsored by a bank, which is going to be traced to Switzerland eventually. But the point is, the viceroys or the banking authorities, they're the ones that claim the land because they're paying for the trip. Now they'll split the bounty with the soldiers. Otherwise, you can't get a soldier to just work for money. They want a bonus. And so you essentially do a 50-50 split between the Viceroyalty of Spain and the local generals and officers of the Spanish Army and Navy. You cut them in on the deal, then they'll have more incentive. All right. And they use the Franciscan monks for pacification and control of the local people. So San Diego was first, Monterey was second, Monterey Bay and Monterey Presidio, and they built a Catholic Monterey mission, which immediately had problems with the soldiers interfering with the women. So it was decided to move the mission up and over the hill of the Monterey Bay Peninsula area. They didn't have a road around Pebble Beach yet, so they went up and over a hill to the other side of the Carmel River, and they repositioned the mission and called it Mission, Carmel. It's about a 4.5-mile distance from the Presidio Army Base in Monterey, up and over the hill and down back to the ocean on Carmel River. And that was the second mission of the 21 missions. Then they created Mission San Antonio de Padua, which they built Fort Hunter Liggett Army Base adjacent to San Antonio mission, which is the closest mission to the Esalen Institute. Now, just because it's close to the Esalen Institute doesn't mean you can walk. It's up and over a 2,500-foot mountain, which is extremely steep and very difficult. But the whole Big Sur area from Carmel down to San Simeon, where the Hearst Castle is, that entire coastline was impassable back in 1769. They did, explore it. The Spanish explorers did go out and they surveyed it as well. But in terms of building a legitimate road, that took decades to accomplish. And there were mudslides and problems all along that coastline. It's very rugged, and it's about 3,000 feet of mountains that just jut up from the Pacific Ocean. All right, so those are the first three: was San Diego, Monterey, San Antonio de Padua, aka Fort Hunter Liggett. Then they built San Gabriel Archangel, which is east of Pasadena, east of the Rose Bowl. And that is set back away from Long Beach and the Port of Los Angeles. That's quite a distance. I think it's 60 miles distance from the nearest port facility. So that's truly inland along what became the El Camino Real Highway, which today the El Camino Real is kind of hidden and masked by Imperial Highway 5, because to go from San Diego up to San Juan Capistrano, you would take Highway 5, and that is known also as the El Camino Real. Imperial Highway 5 is what people think of today, but that's really the El Camino Real. And anyway, so the first missions after San Gabriel Archangel was then San Luis Obispo, which is just south of the Esalen Institute. It's 9 miles south of the Hearst Castle. Then we had what became San Francisco, but was at the time called Yerba Buena, and it was St. Francis of Assisi Mission Dolores. That was the 6th mission of the 21, was Mission Dolores, which later became known the city of San Francisco, city by the bay. The 7th mission was Mission San Juan Capistrano, which they did in 1782. 1782. The Mission San Diego was 1769. You know that the Spanish army was already roaming around, and they declared the Coachella Valley and Palm Springs Desert area for the Viceroy of Spain in the year before, in 1768. So, in other words, they didn't build the missions until they knew what kind of land they were looking at. First, they explored the land, then they had a meeting and decided strategically, where should we put military outposts to protect us against the Russians who could come down here and claim Alta California. So the order that they did it was San Diego, Monterey Carmel, Mission San Antonio de Padua, which later became the Esalen Institute, the southern point of Big Sur. Then they created San Gabriel Archangel, which is essentially between Pasadena and Claremont, California. Then they created San Luis Obispo de Tolosa, and that again is in the southern area, about 35 miles south of the Esalen Institute is San Luis Obispo. Then they created Mission Dolores, St. Francis of Assisi in the city of San Francisco. Then they created San Juan Capistrano in 1782. Now, let me show you some other photographs here of this mission, the 7th mission. I'm coming to you from Mission Solano, which is Mission Sonoma, which is the 21st mission. All right, it was the last mission that is connected up with the El Camino Real, the King's Highway. I'm in Sonoma. The distance from San Diego to me in Sonoma is 600 miles. So this Spanish military 21 mission system is military, and it's 600 miles distance. 6 is a 33, the highest level of the chain of command, right? Obedience, chain of command. And that's the distance between San Diego and Sonoma is 600 miles. It's quite impressive. And this is all along the obelisk, all along the watchtower. And these are the gardens and the pond here at Mission San Juan Capistrano, which is on Camino Capistrano, which parallels El Camino Real, which is essentially part of Imperial Highway 9. This is the basilica that you'll enter today if you were to visit Sarah's Church. This is named after Father Junipero Serra, and this is his golden altar. This is the golden altar of the basilica there for Father Junipero Serra. And this is the highway that goes to the east from the mission. This is called the Ortega Highway. There's all of the aluminum chalk chemtrails paid for by Switzerland. That's aluminum and polymer smart dust. If you follow this highway along past the Santiago Parkway and you climb approximately 2,500 feet, you'll come here and you'll look out at Lake Elsinore and the town of Elsinore. This will give you some idea of the circuitous nature of the Ortega Highway. And the reason we call it a dangerous highway is multiple reasons. Number one is it's very curvy, and it descends almost 4,000 feet in under 10 miles. You initially go up to about 2,500 feet, but then I think it pitches up to about 4,000. Then you drop down to the valley floor, and it's steep and it's curvy. And in this area, population settlements that occurred after the Spanish conquest, there's over 1 million people who live along the 28 miles from the town of Elsinore and Lake Elsinore to San Juan Capistrano, Dana Point, San Clemente, Mission Viejo, Lake Forest, Laguna Niguel, Orange County areas of Santa Margarita and Trabuco Canyon, Santiago Canyon. And if you go from San Luis Capistrano, it's 28 miles to get to Lake Elsinore. There's about 1 million people who live in around there. And of course, just like Paul Pelosi, they like to get out with their Maserati and their Porsches and their motorcycles and basically use the Ortega Highway as a racetrack. It most definitely is a racetrack. All right. That's why it's dangerous. And that's why we call it dangerous. Is it the most dangerous highway in America? No, it's not. I think I-95 in the East Coast has the most deaths per mile of any highway ever constructed in world history. So I think the East Coast holds the record. And there's a San Bernardino highway that has quite a few fatalities, more than this. But Ortega Highway is also known for fatalities on motorcycles. There was a study performed by the University of California, Berkeley, that stipulated during a 10-year period, there were 57 fatalities of traffic accidents, 35 of which were motorcycle accidents, 35 of the 57 in a 10-year period recently. So that's one reason it's dangerous, is because we had 57 people killed on the highway in under 10 years. But in addition to that, it is also a popular serial killer dump site for their bodies. And there's been at least 7 dead bodies found in this highway over a 7-year period. So that averages 1 dead body disposal per year in the 1970s. I think 1970 to 1977, they found 7 dead bodies along Highway 74. It's known as SR 74, State Route 74. Also goes by 740, 740, but they dropped the 0 and they call it SR 74. But on my channel, we call it the Ortega Highway. And that Lake Elsinore, it hooks up with what's called the Highway of the Pines. They call it the Pines to the Palms Highway. And this adds another 65 miles onto the Ortega Highway. And we really go from Cathedral City, which is between Palm Springs and Rancho Marietta. And it's 93 miles to the town of San Juan Capistrano at the mission at El Camino Real and Camino Capistrano. there's a mission. You should know that's exactly 4 miles to the beach. There's a San Juan Capistrano Beach and a Dana Point Park. It is 4 miles from the mission. The mission is 4 miles set back from the ocean. But the highway does not extend to the beach. It extends from the mission, which is 4 miles inland from the Pacific Ocean. I know I've ridden my bike all over this thing. I've been on the Ortega Highway, portions of it, I think 8 times in my life, 8 times. But I only did a small section, maybe 6 miles of the 28 miles. You know, the Ortega Highway officially is 28 miles long from Lake Elsinore to the mission San Juan Capistrano is 28 miles. But if you want to extend SR 74 to its conclusion, you'll end up in Palm Springs at Cathedral City, which has approximately 51,000 people living in Cathedral City in the Coachella Valley, named after the Coachella Indians. They have 51,000 people living in Cathedral City, which is really the end or the beginning of the Ortega Highway. In the city of San Juan Capistrano, which is in Orange County, there's only 35,000 people, residents in San Juan Capistrano. It's strikingly lower than what's in the desert, 93 miles away. 93 miles away to the east in the blistering heat, there are more people living out there, retirees, etc. If you stay along this highway, Ortega, and you follow through the serpentine corners behind my shoulders there, you'll go through Lake Elsinore and continue to Mountain Center, and you will be at the LSD Timothy Leary Ranch, which also went by the name of the Forbes Ranch, and it's for sale if you're interested in purchasing an LSD ranch. I believe it's 78 acres, right? So anyway, what else can I tell you? It's this is all one big Spanish Inquisition. Here is a photograph of one of the residents of Lake Elsinore. This is Jackie Coogan, also known as Uncle Fester, right? Is Uncle Fester? It's Uncle Fester. He lived in Lake Elsinore. And guess who else? Bela Lugosi, who played Count Dracula, the vampire. He had 2 different residences at Lake Elsinore. I believe Jackie Coogan just had one. And all 3 of those homes are still up. They haven't been destroyed. So you have 2 Bela Lugosi homes and 1 Uncle Fester of the Addams Family, an ABC television show to combat the Munsters, which was a CBS television show with Al Lewis playing the vampire on that show. Remember, we had Herman Munster, and we had Lily, his lovely wife, and then they had the uncle. I forgot the name of the uncle, played by the Jewish comedian Al Lewis. Anyway, this is the Uncle Fester character of the Addams Family, and he lived at Lake Elsinore. Just thought I'd throw that in there as a little factoid. That's basically at the bottom of this hill. You'll find Lake Elsinore. So what else can I tell you? The Ortega Highway has many little stopping off points along the way. There's a place called Ortega Falls. Sadly, that's closed to the public because they had a forest fire rip through this canyon area a couple years ago. So there actually is a water creek running with waterfalls. It rages more in the wintertime, but it runs all year round. It sadly is not open to the public. There's a place called Hell's Kitchen, which was a restaurant that served motorcycle riders. Hell's Kitchen, it also is closed. Then there's the Lookout Roadhouse restaurant, which will give you a spectacular view. I'm posting a 22-minute video in the links below by Sidetrack Adventures, 22 minutes. I think it's quite excellent. That covers the 28 miles from Lake Elsinore over to San Juan Capistrano Mission. It's 28 miles long, even though I told you the highway is 93 miles, but the Ortega Highway portion is really 28. and then it's the Pines to the Palms is 65 miles long. And you put them together and you get State Route 74. But the video I'm going to post is really confined to the 28 miles, which you could do in a day. You really couldn't do the whole 93 miles in a day. It's going to be too tedious with all the stopping off points. But we have Ortega Falls, we have Hell's Kitchen. You can still look at them. They're not open. They have campgrounds. There's a number of campgrounds and state parks. There's the Lookout from the Roadhouse, which Sidetrack Adventures does a spectacular job. He and his wife had a 4 o'clock early dinner, late lunch, and he got a filet mignon sandwich, and his wife got a breakfast burrito at 4 p.m. It's a spectacular view looking down at Lake Elsinore. You can see the lake from where they are having their lunch. Although there are chemtrails above their head, which, typical YouTuber, they never look at the sky. They never, ever look at the sky to see all the pollution above their heads. And, it's funny, we call these missions, Mission Carmel, we call it Mission San Antonio de Padua, but we really should call them Mission Chemtrails, because every one of the 21 missions along the 600-mile El Camino Real from San Diego to Sonoma, they're all 100% polluted with aluminum chalk, getting every 10 minutes dumped with human augmentation. It's not geoengineering. That's not why they're doing it. Can you use the pollution in the sky to create hurricanes and storms? Yes, you can. But that's not the point. The point is to hook you up to the cloud. It's to inoculate and to vaccinate all the vaccinated people and all the clueless unvaccinated people, because everyone is getting tethered to the cloud. Whether you comply or whether you don't comply, they are spending trillions of dollars to hook everyone up. And damn it, if they're not doing exactly what they did in 1768 to 1833, they're resettling California. And they're doing that to Paris, France, Milan, and Italy, and Rome, and Athens, Greece, and Berlin, Germany, and London, England, and Manhattan, New York. Everybody is being resettled with an immigration policy and a pacification, real ID, verification, palm print, eyeball recognition, human augmented tagging and chipping, which is what that aluminum will do. It hooks everyone up as if they're a cell phone. They have a MAC address. Don't you get it? When you ingest all this aluminum on your skin, it's not poison ivy, it's aluminum chalk. And it gives you a QR code reception so you can be traced, tracked, and targeted 24/7. Anyway, that's going on, and that's going on in the YouTube videos that I post on my show. This area in San Juan Capistrano, if you didn't know, was one of the best places in the entire world to live in Orange County, California. This is home to Richard Nixon. He was at San Clemente, which is the next door neighbor to San Juan Capistrano, and Dana Point, which is where Nicole Brown's parents were living, in Dana Point, and home to Laguna Niguel and Mission Viejo and Santa Margarita and Newport Coast and Newport Beach, Irvine, Laguna, the town of Laguna, and San Onofre Bluffs, San Onofre Beach, San Clemente Beach, Trabuco Canyon, Santiago Canyon, Tustin, San Juan Creek parallels the Ortega Highway. The San Juan Creek runs down from this vista point. It runs down to the Pacific Ocean at San Juan Capistrano Beach, is where the San Juan Creek meets the Pacific Ocean. So this area, the San Antonio Parkway and San Clemente and the White House of the West Coast for Richard Nixon, and the state beach, the state park beach of San Onofre Bluffs and Beach, extending down to Camp Pendleton, United States Marines and Navy Base, which becomes North San Diego County. This is where Lino LaBianca wanted to live. He wanted to race horses in Vista near Camp Pendleton, San Diego County, which is just south of San Juan Capistrano, just south of this property here. Just south meaning 25 miles south. About 20, as the crow flies, probably 20 miles south. So it's not far. Anyway, that's what I wanted to tell you today. The Spanish, they saw Lake Elsinore and they called it Laguna Grande. They named it Laguna Grande in 1768. Then later, as the decades rolled by, there came up with a myth that there was a sea monster living in the lake Elsinore named Elsie. So they renamed the lake Lake Elsinore after the sea monster, female monster in the lake, Lake Elsinore. Then, of course, we had a motorcycle Grand Prix race. Grand Prix means 125-mile motorcycle race, where they did laps around the town, like 25-mile laps, 5 laps of 25 miles. Steve McQueen and Malcolm Smith appeared in On Any Sunday, where they featured like a 1969, 1970 Lake Elsinore race. It ran from 1968 to 1972. They took a break. They came back, and that motorcycle race has been on and off for about 50 years, since 1968 until today. I don't know when the last Lake Elsinore motorcycle race was, but the area has been built out. A lot of retirees have moved in, so they're not really excited about motorcycle racing anymore. So again, the Spanish claimed this area for Spain, for the Viceroyalty of Spain in 1768. And today in 2026, we have the Ortega Highway combined with Lake Elsinore and the Palms to the Pines Highway to Cathedral City, to the Palm Desert, takes you to the Coachella Music Festival. And the Coachella, there's numerous Indian reservations along Highway, State Route 74. What little remains of the native indigent people is memorialized along this Ortega Highway. That's my video. I hope you enjoyed it. Do like and share. I am heavily shadow banned, and check the links below to get yourself a Juxtaposition 1 coffee mug, and have a great day. We'll talk soon. Bye now.